right, it's episode 8 of the PEBAheads with Sean and Michael this week. Got some interesting topics as always. We're going to cover international amateur that have been signed so far, and then dive into some of the trades that have been made. And then if we have time at the end, we'll kind of go over where the league's at, standings wise, and some teams that are on the rise. So since we got limited time today, we'll just dive right in. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing good. We're coming off some good sims, so I can't complain. Um, New Jersey's doing fine, so I don't think I'll catch West Virginia this year, unless Greg decides to let one of his other kids take over running his team. Then for now, I think I will be sitting in second, but we'll still a long season, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, it's always funny to, I know Greg's getting hot now, so we'll see which kid it's going to be. But no, they've done good, and it's good to get other people involved, and nice that Greg's taking time to get other kids involved with this. So that's all I'll say about that.
Definitely.
But I've got the international free agent page pulled up right now, and do you have any initial thoughts on any of the signings that were made, or what teams did or didn't do?
So I think we had some good activity this year. We had a lot of teams trying to make use of their funds. Obviously, the trend of a couple teams totally overspending on certain names at the very top is just going to continue. We saw Charleston pay 27 million for Morales. Some other big signings out there: 16 million for Vina Tempe, 16 million for Roberto Perez from Charleston. So they clearly got their two big names, I think, that they're probably hoping for. New Orleans spent big on Sheroy. So the big spending still out there. I'm probably more surprised that there's, at least from the information available to us, 13 teams that have done absolutely nothing. So we always talk about how can people speed up their competition or their competitiveness. How can teams get better? And to see 13 teams not even spend a dollar is a little surprising, especially with some of the names of those teams that have not spent. Just don't bother to take an opportunity, because if I look at my international complex, I've got at least 10 to 12 guys that are half a star, maybe. And if I go through them one by one and try to change their ratings based on whatever level, whether I go short season A, RA, or rookie league, those 12 to 13 guys are still all terrible. So there are plenty of guys available on the international markets that supposedly are going to be better than that. So it's like, why do you not take the opportunity to at least dive in and make an offer? I know we were talking a bit earlier, but there's plenty of teams that I think utilized a strategy of just going low and trying to pick off guys near the bottom, and a lot of teams benefited from that.
Yeah, and that's what I think I like most about the change to this system for international amateurs. It just seems like in years past, it was just highest bidder on a few guys, and then there was just not much there behind it. But with the pool being deeper, it's giving teams that opportunity to have different strategies and take advantage of, you know, hey, I still want to stay below my 2.8 million total, but I can spend to that and get a few guys that are going to be better than most of the guys that my scout brings in. So definitely think that I like that aspect of it. And yeah, I was stunned seeing the amount of teams that did nothing. So I don't know if that's a misunderstanding of the rules or just lack of making it an attempt, or maybe a few teams did make an attempt but got outbid because of the tax on the previous year. But regardless, I mean, I think it's another way to add talent to your system, and it's one of those that anybody can do it. It doesn't matter if you're a big, large budget team or a small budget team. You can prioritize and plan to make an impact, I think, is the big thing.
Yeah. And I guess the one thing that we don't have access to, and I don't want to sit here and just say these 13 teams, they just didn't bother, because I don't know that. I'm using the information available to us. You can see the same thing I can see there. It says it's available, but I can't actually see their player development screen in their front office to understand whether they actually have $0 set to their signing cap, and maybe they have the budget available because that's just the standard, 28 or 2.8 million. And maybe they didn't actually allocate any funds to it. So that could be the case as well. But still, I mean, I would still hold true to my comment that, like, at the same time, I mean, these cheaper guys are worth it. And if I go off an example of my own team, literally that first day that international amateurs were available, I had my agent just scout a guy and find me a guy himself, a pitcher that looks absolutely useless and terrible, 2 bad personality rankings, a 1 out of 1 in movement, a 1 out of 2 in control, a 1 out of 2 or a 1 out of 4 in stuff. So I mean, this guy's a career minor leaguer, probably won't ever see the league. But at that same day, I signed a catcher for only
It goes
$500,000.
Yep.
Yeah, that could potentially be a future catcher in New Jersey. I can up his defense a bit when it comes time to winter ball and make him a little bit better, and he's a viable option for me down the road. So compared to what my scout finds, which is a whole lot of hot garbage, I mean, I'll take it. It's money well spent.
Yeah. No, and I liked how, people will complain, oh, Charleston went out and spent a bunch of money. That's part of their strategy. That's what they're doing. You want to do that, you can do that strategy too. They got 2 good players that they liked. People can judge or, say they should spend 40.3 million differently, but it's up. I mean, they got 2 decent players, not decent, above average players, and I think the only criticism I would have of that is I don't think they got the best player, and at least according to my scout, Vina, that Tempe got, was the highest rated, at least, hitter that was signed. So, it's one of those things where it's just you're picking what you like. So that's what my scout sees. OSA likes them too, so it's right, same ballpark there. So
Yeah, he's the highest rated guy that came out of the international. He's already 18th on the top 100 prospect list.
So yeah, that's always a good thing too to look at, is once you do sign these guys, where are they ranking at? Then kind of evaluate, is your scout what, it's not that your scout is necessarily is wrong, but like there's something to it. They're not being put there for no reason. So another team I liked what Neo Tokyo did. I liked how they spread their money around and got added a lot of different bats, and they added a nice pitcher as well. It's nice to see there's different strategies, and teams are getting better. It's not just the one way of doing it anymore. And I mean, think even like Gloucester added a guy, everyone's favorite name, Nude the Cock. Added him for 2.8 million. I mean, really, like, so even like that, if your team budget was, obviously, if you were only going to budget 2.8 million, you wouldn't have got him because you would have got outbid. However, what it's showing you is that you're not having to spend much more than what your budget is to get players of that caliber. Now, different scouts will have their different rankings on him. I know mine isn't as big of a fan as OSA, but it's nice to see that you're not stuck with those half star guys anymore. Like you can actually go and add some guys in there. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I've benefited from the scout finding the random 5-star find. So I'm not saying that it doesn't happen, and but it's rare.
It's very rare. There's lots of teams out there, me being one of them, that has not gotten anybody good. So
Yeah.
being able to, I've signed 7 guys. I budgeted just a 2.8, and I've signed 7 guys so far. I have another 3 offers out there, and they're all better than that 0.5-star guy that my scout is tending to find for me. So
Yeah.
I'll take advantage of it all day long.
Well, and like you look like a team like Toyoma. I believe they spent under their budget as well. Yep, they've got 730,000 that they can spend left, but they added a few nice solid players. I know you've added, like you said, the 7. I've only added 2, but I like the 2 that I added. I know me personally, I just decided I was looking at my expenses and my budget for next year, and I liked the position I was in better for that year to kind of go a little bit more hard on signing guys. But that's what's nice about it. You can make those decisions and you can still add players instead of just not getting anything. So
I agree.
I
So whether you
also
just
like,
didn't want to spend or you didn't budget money towards it, still makes sense. There's still lots of 2-star, and I know I'm just calling out stars because that's just what I have
yeah,
my screen settings to. But there's still, ignoring the stars, there's guys that look like they have potential to at least be backups. And
yeah,
if that's what you're going to pay for, if you're going to pay 200,000 for a backup or 300,000 for a backup, hey, that's not bad. It's let him develop. You never know. He could turn into something more.
yeah. No, and there's quite a few teams that spent right at their budget or right below it. You know, Duluth looks like they went through and added a few guys that same way, still went under the cap so they can make a run at it next year. There's definitely teams that are starting to take advantage of it more so than kind of in the past. And it's always been that, teams complaining about, oh, I don't have the budget, I can't compete. Well, you can now. So what's the excuse now?
Yeah. It's any way you can get better. We're not saying you're going to sign a super stud for the 2 million or whatever. Probably
Right.
won't. But hey, I mean, you got to fill your team with something over time. And if you're constantly just filling it with 36, 37-year-old guys and well past their prime and overpaying for them, why is this not a route that you're using to get some of those pieces? But yeah, I
Right.
mean, we could preach all day
Oh
on
yeah.
our philosophies on this.
No, I wanted to bring it like Dylan, I thought did a good job. He signed a left fielder that doesn't look like he's gonna be great at anywhere, above and beyond or above average, but Jose Garcia looks like a decent player. He's got a relief pitcher that I really like, this Marquez. 2 really good pitches. Gets lucky with adding a third, could be a decent player. And if he doesn't get I mean, yes, he has a changeup, but I don't really count that as a third. Because I always, when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at average to above average pitches. But Marquez looks like a great player that he got, even if the adding the third or adding the pitch doesn't work like he wants. It's still a good relief pitcher. So I
Yeah,
mean,
for only 800,000.
800,000. Yeah.
Yep. My scout actually likes him even more. So that was definitely a solid pickup.
Well, and with that, we've had 2 rounds now, or 2 weeks of international. There's definitely, even after that first go around, if you missed out on some guys, there were guys left that were still good players that you could make an attempt on. So that was nice to see too. It wasn't just a lot of people criticize it for being a one and done. But according to my scout, there were other players that were available after that first one. So I've got it on OSA now, but um, yeah, I mean, even if these guys are just like 2 stars or 1.5 star guys, they're better than the majority of the guys that, like you had mentioned earlier, Michael, in your complex. So what's it hurt if you got money? Throw 200 grand
Exactly.
on a guy.
Taking chances,
Yeah,
increase the amount of chances you can take. Bound to eventually hit on something.
right. Well, and then the other topic, we've got trade deadline expiring tonight with this sim. There's already been some pretty big trades.
And
There's also been
quick question for you: does it expire tonight, or is tonight the sim that takes us to the deadline? Because
that's a good
I don't want
point
to
because
confuse those.
that's a good point.
The
So
31st is a deadline, so tonight's
31st,
sim will take us to the deadline, meaning we will have, and I know Mike stops it, so you'll have till next Monday to make
okay.
trades.
So yeah, that is a very important point to make so we don't get anybody confused. Yeah,
Everyone stop trading. No,
we won't move over till Monday until the sim after tonight. So we still have time. There could be some bigger moves. Could be.
it could be some slow in the works
I mean,
deals, possibly.
yeah, maybe there'll be another team like Arlington that'll decide that the player that's untouchable is just now free reign.
You never know.
But we kind of already hit on the deal that you made on the last podcast that we had, and we kind of already, I don't want to beat a dead horse with the McCoy deal with Palm Springs, but I do want to touch on Palm Springs later on just kind of some of the things they're doing. But any initial thoughts on this kind of second to last sim before?
And I kind of struggle with this because it's there has been a lot of trading that's happened in the weeks before, but I feel like now that we know the trade deadline's coming up, it's really quieted down. There's been a lot of people that have said, "Oh, hey, I got all these guys available." Um, me ranting previously on how over advertising doesn't always work out in your favor, but a lot of people said that a lot of guys were available. Everyone was looking for trades, and we in the past week had three trades. Yay! So I mean, some decent trades though. I think some decent moves have been made. Obviously, the Bears have been busy. They're trying to retool, try to figure things out. That's probably the big one. Mata being moved is going to be the big deal that if you want to look in the recent trades, kind of to look at, just that's the one big hitting catcher. Maybe not the greatest defensive catcher, but probably one of the league's best hitting catchers. Um, Shifted from the Sovereign League over to us over here in the IL, so that should be interesting to watch. He's obviously um, come out hitting very quickly for Florida, so I'm sure Jay's happy about that. He's not here to talk about it, but I mean, in 5 games, he's hitting 529. I guess he can't complain with that trade to start, but he's definitely not the greatest defensive catcher. But if he makes up for it in his bat, maybe that's not really too painful for him. And what did he give up? He gave up some prospects. Gallegos looks, I think, okay. I think probably the big piece being cash back in the first round pick in this one. Obviously, lots of cash savings for the Bears as well, because Mata, if I remember correctly, has a deal that goes out at least another to 2044. So he's got another 5 years to go.
Yep.
Um, but it's Mata still in his prime, so there's nothing wrong with that for Jay. Just that's a lot of money and lots of savings for the Bears to try to figure out then what they want to do going forward. Because obviously they've not been winning. They're ranked pretty low overall. So if it's now is the time to kind of retool or reshuffle and rethink. Lenny wants to rethink what they're going to do. I don't blame him. If he can get Rim Fire off the books sooner than next year, I'm sure that'll help as well. But that's probably the
Uh,
big trade. I don't have a huge position on it other than it helps Florida, and Bakersfield obviously benefited from cash savings. Got a couple prospects that he has a chance that they could work out, but he got the first rounder as well. So I don't know, win-win, I guess.
yeah, and I like that Lenny's making the call now and doing something about it rather than, you kind of get in that loop of, if I just add a few more players, then things are going to turn around, and it's most likely, oftentimes, that's not the not so it's not going to what's going to happen. So it's nice that he's looking forward. He's getting some extra bullets in his gun there to try to take a chance, and he's going to have a good draft pick this year too. So see what happens. But I do want to call this to your attention. Some people don't like it when people do this, but I love it. I think it's hilarious when someone, like in this case Dan, comments on a trade and it's just wow.
Is he upset? Is he happy? What is it?
Yeah. So Dan,
Maybe
yeah, reach out to us and tell us what the wow was about.
I could throw a wow in there. Maybe I helped get Lenny moving because I was asking about Mata
Yeah.
a while ago before I ended up moving every single piece I had in the draft. But yeah, I was initially asking about Mata as well. And at that time Lenny wasn't ready to move him, but maybe it got him thinking and that led to the trade. So I'm gonna take credit for that one regardless, because why not?
Wow. And then we had the trade between Palm Springs and Yuma. That one can't has not been confirmed yet by Yuma, so it looks like it in jeopardy of not getting processed. But
Might end up not getting processed tonight, might end up getting processed down the road. Um, if obviously Bob can't get in there quick enough to confirm it. But that was another interesting one, another first rounder moving from Palm Springs, who, while they are rebuilding and improving, they should be a decent, solid kind of middle of the round pick. Um, I haven't looked at Chen. Chen looked decent when I looked at him last. I did like Chu though. That is one that I am surprised about to see him go, just because you got a 22-year-old absolute defensive stud at a prime position. Um, yeah, probably could have asked for just a little bit more.
where is this Chen guy?
He is in triple A.
Okay. There we go. So yeah, I wonder, we were kind of touching on this before we got into the podcast, but it makes you wonder like what Bob's scout is seeing, or if Bob is using just OSA versus, I know my scout doesn't like him as much as OSA tends to like Chen here, but
Yeah, definitely an interesting player. I don't have anything against. I mean, not terrible. I'm in the similar situation where OSA is way more infatuated with him than my scout. Um, but by no means is he terrible. Maybe he just at 21 years old bounced up from single A straight to triple A. This is where, in my opinion, it's despite his ratings, I probably would have given him the year in double A, let him kind of destroy the competition there, grow, instead of jumping him straight to triple A. And clearly he's just not up to par of some of the other competition there, even though his ratings say he is.
Yeah,
And that's where ratings aren't always the determining factor. And you kind of have to find a balance and looking at both,
yeah,
what are the ratings telling you? What are their actual performance telling you? Because double A would have been a little bit of a friendlier introduction to him, even though double A, we don't really have any parameters as far as age limits. But I think most teams are still stacked younger in double A. But in triple A, you're going to get a lot of the older leftovers, the 4A type guys. So tougher competition. He didn't do as well. So maybe I'm just not liking him as much because he seems a bit rushed.
yeah. Well, and then this is a player that Palm Springs got back. Uh, Chu, shortstop, 22 years old. Um, my scout likes him better than OSA does on the defensive side, but OSA seems to like him better as a hitter, which is interesting. But yeah, I mean, it's really kind of solidifying what Palm Springs has been able to build over there, over the making some of these moves and then adding some of these players. It's going to be interesting to see how they do the rest of the year, but it's definitely setting them up for a good foundation for the next few years.
The one big piece for this trade for me is Palm Spring does a lot what I do when I ship away every single one of my picks. He went young. Um, he got himself a cornerstone piece that is going to be with the franchise for a long time. I don't hesitate to give up a first rounder if it's going to be somebody that's going to be with me for a long time that I can then lean on and I don't have to worry about that position going forward. So obviously we talked about Francisco last time, but 27 years old, he's kind of like in his prime. Um, Happy to give up a first rounder for that, just so that I know that at least first base or DH, whatever ends up kind of rolling, I have another piece that I don't have to worry about. So I like it from that perspective for Palm Springs as well, because I will do that trade every day of the year if I can get a guy that young that I'm confident in kind of going forward.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I like that Bob got first round pick out of it, but I think when I first looked at the deal, I didn't realize that the shortstop he gave up was 22 years old. I think that's where kind of start questioning the why behind it, but maybe I don't know. Maybe Bob's looking at it saying I'm way off or I'm further off than what I thought I was, but
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what he does with that pick. The Palm Springs pick is getting deeper and deeper into the first round. Seems like every sim.
Yeah.
Then the last
Let's
trade
go.
quickly is just between the Scottish and Bakersfield, just this 1-for-1 deal. And two players that uh, you know, both GMs had described as underperforming at their current location. So it'll be interesting to see if kind of a change of scenery gets them going. But just from talking with Lenny on this one, a lot of it just made sense for both teams because he was looking to save some money but get a hitter that could kind of help stabilize things while he's trying to rebuild, and I was looking for more production out of my DH slot. So it's different production than what I generally put in a DH slot, but kind of looking forward to adding another high on base, high speed guy in front of some of my power hitters.
Yeah, I can't complain with it. It was nice to see that you guys were able to do kind of a 1-for-1 deal, both 27 years old. I think it's kind of accurate what you're both saying that they're probably not wowing either of you guys currently. But they still look like solid talent any way I look at them. Maybe heading over to Bakersfield, Cruz will unlock whatever little bit of hidden talent that he's putting away. It's a cheaper option for Lenny as well, and he actually gets some defense out of that position or player now. And then you get a little bit more consistent bat. So not a huge loss. You gotta pay a little bit more, but if you're willing to take on that risk, yeah, it's hopefully you'll get more production out than Cruz is giving you, and then I don't really have any complaints.
Yeah, and to your point, from the last podcast, it was one of those situations where if I would have probably shopped Cruz around, I might have been able to find a package that brought me more back. But I had debated even waiting till the offseason to do it. But when Lenny had reached out about the availability of a couple of his players, it just kind of it made sense. And it was one of those things where it just didn't make sense for me to either one try to shop or two kind of to try to nickel and dime Lenny to either pay a little bit more to balance it out, or it was just like ultimately you have two teams that are getting what they're looking for, so why draw it out even more? So it was a
And
nice smooth talk.
and I find it interesting because I don't think either of you guys would have gotten anything more for either of them. Just seeing how some of the trades have been going down and
Oh yeah,
knowing how some GMs value their players, I don't know if either of you guys would have gotten anything significantly more if it was. I mean, Takahashi has been. I think that name was already out there, so I think
yep.
Lenny's already mentioned him before, and he mentioned he was available. I don't know if he was getting other offers, but people don't. I feel like it's a select group of GMs that are jumping out and making offers and reaching out to people, and then we have a large portion of the league that either isn't as interested in trading or happy to just draft an international free agency and kind of do their own path, and that's fine. Not everyone's looking to dive in and take risks and do the trades. So
Well, I think Scott said it too on one of his podcast episodes that he gets attached to his own guys and just kind of doesn't want. It's hard to let those guys go, so I don't know if that's some of it with other teams as well, that you drafted the guy, you want to see how they're gonna perform and ultimately what they're gonna become, and then you don't want it. You're gonna like kick yourself or worry about kicking yourself on watching them perform well for someone else. That's what I
yeah, I think
currently say.
that's
I mean,
that's definitely a lot of it. I would assume a lot of people are gun shy. They don't want to feel bad if someone overperforms. Like I was looking back at a trade recently I did with Gloucester to get Bill Evans and Bill Johnson, the trade of the two Bills. Um, Sent him a first round pick, Cologne, who was kind of a borderline prospect, but then I did send him Santiago, and he's absolutely blowing up. I think he's a top 20 prospect now. Um, he had potential when I had him, but now at 23 years old and yeah, a lefty arm looks like he's going to be a potential long term piece for the Fishermen. So happy for Andy there, but yeah, that's like one of those where I'm like kicking myself a little bit. Like, was this deal worth making? would I have traded Santiago now for Evans, or I would have kept Santiago instead of Evans? So yeah, so I see that, but I mean, it's you win some, you lose some. That's what it is. That's why you just keep making more trades and or just move on. It's can't sit here and cry over spilt milk longer than 20 seconds on a podcast and then you move on.
Well, and then you're if you get stuck too much into that, you're blocking yourself from potentially making a great deal down the road where, like you said, you win some, you lose some. It's not
Yep,
it's not something that you can't go back and change. You can just move forward and how you do those deals. And
exactly.
if you're moving forward as not doing deals, then ultimately I think you're gonna fall behind because
Yep, I agree. I think you can't be gun shy. And I'm happy with the other pieces I got in the trade, and I'm happy that Andy has pieces that are benefiting him, and he got a draft pick out of it as well. So it was just one of those things that I looked back on, and I can see that as an example of making people hesitate, but
yeah,
I don't think it's worth hesitating.
no. Well, then let's kind of tie this whole trade discussion kind of into where we're at with regular season standings before before we get to the trade deadline here. It's interesting to see kind of the moves that teams were making. You definitely are getting a sense of what teams are kind of going for it, and others that are just kind of either holding tight or just saying no, this isn't going to be our year. Was there any team that really stood out to you for kind of going all in?
But obviously, I mean, if we go back a bit, Arlington with the going all in on the tank, which is, I think they're currently in the lead for the number one pick.
Yeah.
So they're going all in for the tank. So that's working. Lost the last six, 3 of 7. New Orleans, kind of similar path. I think they may have moved a couple guys. 1 and 9 in their last 10. So they're definitely chasing the bottom. I know Bakersfield with their recent moves are looking to lighten up the purse for future benefit and flexibility and 4 and 6, but they're heading towards the bottom. But then you have teams like Duluth, who obviously picked up, what was his name, Maury,
Yeah, Maury.
who
Yep.
is an absolute beast of a reliever. Wants to really solidify his position there at the top of a very competitive Great Lakes. Actually, it's gotten less. I will say it's gotten less competitive now. It's really much just KZoo and Duluth. We'll see if that changes going forward, but it's a two-team kind of race now in the Great Lakes. Palm Springs is obviously the big obvious one. They've done a lot of moves and 6 of 4 as of late. I think their last 2 months they've had, in June they were 16 and 10. In July they're 12 and 8 so far. So they've definitely benefited from a lot of the moves that have been made over there to try to get more competitive. So excited about Palm Springs. I've been
Yeah, and the other thing with Palm Springs, it's just like think another aspect of this is they're 13 and a half back in their division. They're I think 7
yeah 7.5 back in the wild card.
hard. But the thing I wanted to touch on was that I think too many times people get wrapped up around what the trade deadline is and how it impacts their season this year. And what I like about what Palm Springs is doing is that they're making their team better now, but it's setting themselves up so that heading into next year, they're even more competitive and in a better situation. So hats off to them. I know they made a lot of moves, and it's going to be interesting to see. It's really interesting to see the changing of the dynamic in that division, and it's putting a lot of pressure on the Renos and Auroras of the world. on what they're going to do in the future. Obviously, Reno's having a great year this year. I think they're in a good spot, but yeah, it's always good to see more competition in other divisions. Especially when it's not your own division.
I agree. I'm interested to see how everything kind of plays out because it's who's really trying to be competitive. If you just scroll down a little further there, you see both wild cards. Like, so you have Aurora and Okinawa still battling it out, only 2 games out, or 1.5 and 2 games out in the SL. Shinseki's 7 games back. They was another team that made a lot of moves. I'll be honest, I would love to get Kevin on here to try to talk me through some of those moves. Other than shifting some money around, I came away a bit confused. But at 7 back, like Palm Springs to me definitely signals that they're trying to be competitive. They're trying to make up that ground. But Shinseki, I'm assuming from their moves, they were trying to make up ground. So at least you have teams that are about 7, 8 games out that are still trying to be competitive. Fargo, I don't know if they've kind of thrown their hat in at this point, or Crystal Lake, 9.5 back. If they're just kind of throwing their hat in, and what'll be is just what's going to be. And then if you look at the IL, you've got a tight race at the top 4 there between London, myself, Amsterdam, and Kentucky. And then I don't know if I'd call San Juan competing this year. So I think it's pretty much just the top 3 and then us 4, and then the rest of the teams are kind of based off of what I've seen are kind of just happy to be where they're at, and the season will end wherever it ends. So less competitive of an IL, in my opinion, just from my own personal reviews, but at least visibly, it looks like it's a little bit more of a competitive wild card on the SL side.
Yeah. Well, and I think it shows too, tanking is a strategy. However, you look at how many teams on both sides are, that don't even have 40 wins right now. So
yeah. And how many of those are actually actively tanking? Charleston, Gloucester, New Orleans, Arlington, Tokyo, Bakersfield is retooling, kind of tanking, rebuilding. Yeah. Yuma, I know Bob's trying, but he's probably still kind of sitting there in the borderline of rebuild / retool / tanking. So I don't know, lots and lots of teams with not even 40 wins yet. That's too many teams employing one strategy potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's I don't know. It's part of the debate that will probably never go away, but in regards to real baseball and just having a salary floor, I know a lot of people are focused on salary caps, and I'm more concerned of salary floors, because I think the lack of spending by owners is a much larger problem than the overspending of a few.
Well, if you go to, let's take a look at that. Go to your PEBA screen at the top there.
Yep.
Or you drop down, sorry, at the very top.
Oh, okay.
Go to reports and info and go to the financial report or finances report. First one up there, payroll. 32nd team, Charleston, only 21 million in payroll. Fishermen with 44. So I mean, you've got a lot of teams. How many teams in that group sub 20 at Havana? The last 12 are actually competing. Palm Springs is probably the one that's competing. Madison's slowly trickling that way, but they've got a huge youth movement. Every other team on that list is, and I think Manchester similarly, they're retooling and getting close to competing. So Palm Springs, Manchester, and they're on the upper end of that. Amsterdam on the upper end of that. The last sub 100,000 or 100 million. There's a lot of teams there that are not even trying.
Yeah.
or they're rebuilding and retooling. So it's different, but it's like you get a gap of 21 million versus the top spending in Florida 180 million.
Well,
Like,
it's something that, like, in our league, we've got everyone has the same media revenue.
yep,
So you have from 26 on down teams that are spending less than what their media revenue is. So it's
yep,
not, I don't want to hear about, oh, I don't have the budget. I don't have, like, I know, there's other people. Justin will bring up, like, oh, it's not fair. I can't compete against big teams. Where's your money going? Because 77 million out of your payroll is going towards,
yeah.
it's being covered by
Media's
media
making
revenue.
up with it.
So where's the money going?
Yeah.
I know that took a turn we weren't expecting there, but I think, I mean, it's good to talk about this stuff though, because you really start at everyone's got that 77 million. So then you start adding in, your season ticket revenue and your gate revenue and your merchandising, and it's
Yeah. What are you doing with your money then? I mean, it's a viable question.
yeah, because you can only bring 35 million over the next year. So it's not like, there's I know, like, this year Charleston spent a lot of money in
Yep.
international. However,
40 million.
they're not going to be able to bring like all of it over next year, and then when next year and they're not, like, at some point there's money that's being just kind of taken by the owner per se, or the league, or however you want to, it just goes away. So I don't know. It's interesting when you look at it. I'm hoping teams like Charleston will start to try, because I mean, ever since I've been in the league, there's been the same, like, 3 or 4 teams that are intentionally taking, and it's like, okay, when is this? When are you gonna, like, start, trying to compete? Because I don't know. I think there's a way to do it, and then, but I don't. I think if you get trapped doing it for too long, you're not. The benefit's not there, and then when there's multiple teams that are doing it all at the same time, it's even less of a benefit to do it.
I'll give Jason this one. This I'll give him this credit. He knows he's got a plan. He's sticking to it, and he has a very deep wealth of lots of very potentially high talented players on the cusp. I think he's just probably trying to time it all so everyone comes up at once, and then he can go. To me though, I would not have been able to wait this long. I would have called everyone up, added a few extra pieces, and had to go at it. I get a bit concerned that maybe he's got some of that mentality that Jay had when he was in Madison, where Jay was afraid to compete because he's like, what's the point? You had Florida, you had Toyoma, you had the Ghosts, you had whatever teams appeared to be dominating. Um, and so that they weren't willing to make the move and they keep pushing their window back. I know Jay kind of fell into some of that thinking when he was in Madison.
Yeah,
And Thad now has a plethora of talent to bring up and try to grow. And I mean, we're seeing some of the similar things in Palm Springs, but all of that being said, it doesn't do anything if you have all that talent, if you don't add those pieces that are necessary to complement them, because you're not going to be able to fill out your entire roster with 22-year-olds all at the same time. You're going to have to add somebody down the line if you're not bothering to make those moves. I mean, those moves aren't going to all be available in one free agency. So it's like you got to start piecing it together at some point. I worry some of these teams that are rebuilding are maybe taking or too afraid or slowing down their window, and they need to start, I don't know, mixing it up a bit more.
yeah.
That's
Well,
just my own preference of the way that I build those. So
it's easier to make a 20 game jump than a 40 game jump in a year.
yeah,
So if you can make those incremental upgrades, and I also think like if you're holding guys back just because you're trying to put guys in a window together, like how much benefit are you really like? What are we talking about dollar wise? Holding a guy back an extra year. I know there's been there's been multiple players I've seen here that I thought that teams have held back for not just 1 year but 2 years, and just like what are
Bring
you?
up wino.
Yeah, what are you doing with their like? It's not helping them. Like you can if you have a person stall out at a level, it is not helping their development. Like
I guess to play devil's advocate though, so like he's been holding back wino. Let's just throw it out there. He's been holding back wino. And that's fine. He looks absolutely dominant when he comes up. He's going to be absolutely dominant. I'm going to absolutely hate playing against the Statesman once he eventually throws everything out. Once Jason finally puts in his chips, it's going to be a scary team. But to play devil's advocate, you look at Yuma, and he brought up, and this is where I think some comments that you've made before, where I don't 100% agree with bringing a young guy up too soon. He brought up making Sun pretty early, got the pitching time, the contract time going, and he had to. I don't know if he had to pay this much, but he definitely went all in on Mang's son last year and gave him a $6 million, $180 million contract. So at 25 years old, you're paying a 25-year-old pitcher 27, 28, almost 30 million a year. So maybe there's some things to what Jason's doing and trying to hold back guys to kind of keep that cost from jumping in right away and not bringing up his ARB numbers. Because obviously Bob's got issues probably with trying to keep Sun and trying to keep Pin. He's already paying young Pill Pin $8 million. His next RB numbers is looking at, or arbitration numbers are looking at about 13 million. So his young pitching staff that he covets that are 25 and under and Yuma are getting very expensive very quickly. So just to play a little bit of devil's advocate, so are I guess complaining or saying Charleston is holding back Zoo. Is not eligible for arbitration yet. So 22 years old, this guy's almost pretty much maxed out, ready to destroy the league, and he's still got plenty of time left and cost controlled there. And time that with Godo, same thing, former #1 pick. He's setting himself up for some very long-term, cheap, very talented pitchers. I think maybe it's just frustrating because it's like you see it happening and it's like, damn you, Jason. It's going to suck for us the next like 5, 6 seasons, but
is he
yeah,
going to raise his budget enough
that's yeah,
to sign these guys anyway? Because
yeah. I mean that's
if you
completely true.
tank as much as they are, your budget doesn't go up. Even if he comes in and has 3 winning seasons in a row, it's not gonna it's gonna take more than that amount of time to have your budget catch up. So it's the financial side of the game, I think, is often overlooked, and people are looking too much at I can pay this guy $560,000 versus what's that doing to your overall, like not competing? What is that doing to your overall team budget?
Well, yeah, I mean Charleston, and you can't really see it in game, but you can see it in Stats Lab. Their market size is below average, and their fan loyalty is poor, and that is going to do a lot to hurt them. And it's not going to be a quick turnaround and quick growth once they start winning. And that's probably the devil's advocate to my devil's advocate about you know him saving money on his pitchers by holding them back. At the same time, his market and fan loyalty have taken such huge hits that the market in Charleston is non-existent to begin with.
Right.
So once they're ready to play, is he actually going to be able to compete for longer than a year or two? Or once their actual contracts start coming in, is he going to have to trade them all away and repeat the cycle?
Because I'd argue he's probably a wild card team if he actually put his players at the level that they should be.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we saw what Hartford did last year with pretty much just a pitching staff. And obviously they've taken a hit this year because pitching alone wasn't going to do it. But I mean, Charleston has a pitching staff if he wants it, and he could have very well have been competing in
Like
wild cards with that staff.
when do you bring him up then? Because these hitters aren't going to be ready for another 2 or 3 years. So you're going to just stall out. Like eventually, I would think, especially this 24-year-old, he's got to be getting close to having to be on. Yeah, he's got one more option year left. So like, I think it's going to be interesting because he's going to, you know, he's going to be forced to, I think, here shortly to put these guys on there.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up Southie, you bring up Multi, you bring up Goto, you bring up Zoo. You've got literally four of your five staff already, and I think
Yeah.
he's got Wengi Kun up there already. Even Rusty Hughes at 22 years old isn't a slouch himself. He's got an abundance of starters right now that could probably, I mean, he's got probably one of the best staffs, at least starting five in the IL with those 5 or 6 guys as long as he plays them.
I guess what I don't
Um,
understand is if this is your strategy, then why is Peter Phillips and Rusty Hughes and Wayne Kun even on this team? Like, if you're gonna do it, then do it. Like, that seems odd. Like, then you got down here, you have Wilson Guerrero, Nunez, like Ordonez, Ordonez. You have this 21-year-old Miyamoto. What are you wait? Like, what are you waiting for? You like it just seems kind of like I don't know, a halfway. Like, I'm gonna take that step, but not really take a step.
I don't know.
I don't
Wait for
know.
that
Maybe that's
perfect
enough
combination.
trouble. Then
Yeah,
long way.
I didn't mean to go into this to bash Jason because clearly, like I said, he's got a strategy in mind and he's sticking to it. So kudos to him. He's got a very stacked minor league. He just bought 2 very impressive international free agents that look like they'll have some future impact. Um, so he's got a strategy, and maybe he's not big on trades, and this is the way he's approaching it, and that's fine. At least he's got a plan in mind, and he's sticking to it. And if I look at his international complex, I'm much more jealous of his compared to mine because he's got a lot better looking guys there, and he's got a stacked minor league system. So I think, but to Dylan's point, I've seen him say in Slack, and as we've said today, it's like you're not going to recover that market and fan loyalty at the speed that you're hoping with once you bring all these guys up and start competing. So you're doing a disservice to yourself and actually hurting your chances in the future because of it. So like what is his, and I don't have the screen open. Let me go back to that finances screen. What is his budget at?
And
Charleston's budget's at 130 million. That is not with his low market, low fan loyalty. I don't even know what kind of owner he has, but that team struggle. Like I've been actively competing, you've been actively competing, and it is a struggle to get the manager to increase your budget.
yeah,
And you're pinning yourself down at 130 million right now, and it's fine, that works for now. But once you actually bring all those guys in and they start getting to the point where you got to pay them, you're not going to be able to afford it. And that's the thing. Like you have to, everything has to kind of be slowly done together in time, in my opinion. And the full on tanking, it looks flashy. I mean, I want it to work out for Charleston. Don't
I
get me
do
wrong.
too. I mean,
I want Jason to just unleash hell on the IL, bring up all his pitchers, and just I'm going to be sitting here complaining left and right how I can't beat that team. Just to give Florida a run for their money because he has an incredible staff just waiting in the wings, and he's got some good talent down there. It's just I also worry that it's going to be like 2 seasons and then they're going to disappear again because he won't be able to afford their insanely increasing arbitration numbers.
yeah, I think that's my gripe is like I understand what your strategy is, but I don't understand the execution of it because if you're going to hold guys back, then why are you bringing guys up? And if you're bringing guys up, then why are you holding other ones back? Like, just go. Like,
Open the floodgates.
I mean, yeah, because like, I mean, Michael Nunez looks like he's ready. He, at least according to OSA, Guerrero, he's fine. Like, he'll play, but like, they're not playing well. And if you're, I don't know. It's odd to me just the bringing like a guy like Guerrero up when at AAA wasn't really, I wouldn't say he was raking, and you're not trying to win this year, so what's the point? But
Yep. But you can't keep him back forever. You can't
nope.
bring him up too soon. It's a very intricate dance. Yeah,
Yeah,
you either have the Charleston example or then you have the Yuma example, and Bob's been trying and he's been stuck in his hole and looking for ways out. And now he's probably overpaying his pitchers. And yeah, so it's I guess the potential scary side effects of tanking.
yeah, because like you said, you have Meng Su making 27 million this year, and it jumps up to 32. Um, the only thing I'd say to that is, and it's kind of what I get my gripe about Major League Baseball. Like, Yamamoto just signed for like the highest free agent contract for a starting pitcher, and there are people saying he's never pitched a major league inning, he's not worth it. My counter to that is, I would rather pay a 25-year-old that has the potential, that kind of money, than pay a 33-year-old who wants the same money for their 33 through 38 years. I'll take 25 through 35 at that amount
Yeah.
versus, but it's all about
Yeah, there's
budgeting
nothing
and
wrong with
value.
this deal. Like Bob paid him what he had to be paid. I have nothing against it. He's super young and he's going to have him for a long time. I just feel bad because I know that he struggles with his market and everything, and it's
The
going to
large piece
impact
of
his
it.
decisions. Yeah, it's going to impact his decisions going down the road, unfortunately. But like, how do you not pay soon? He's even on a bad team, he's overwhelmingly good
I mean, you
and
start diving into
sub
like,
two ERAs. Or I would take Sun in a heartbeat.
well, and you start diving into Bob's prospects, and it's like, I don't know. I doubt it's going to happen right now, but soon's probably a guy that you should be trading and getting as much as you possibly can in the offseason for. Or you just keep him and you keep, doing your rebuild thing. But ultimately, I don't know. If some team, it would be hard for me if I was in those shoes. If some team came forward with a deal that I was getting two or three 5-star prospects back for and a couple draft picks, just because of the amount that you're investing there and the fact that your window's nowhere close to being open.
Yeah, difficult situation for sure.
But to Bob's credit, you know, he's growing. He's taking the time and learning from some of the other moves that he's made. So that's
Yep.
what we were talking about that before we started here, of just, getting not necessarily, regretting a deal. You might have your own regrets, but about particular players. But at the same token, like, not getting into that not make a move mode, or I'm not going to make a move so I don't make a mistake, because ultimately you end up missing opportunities. So,
I agree.
well, I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see if we get any more moves with, I guess, a few more days extra before this deadline occurs, but Sim's going to be going on here shortly, so look forward to
This Mike
seeing.
likes to likes to call it as soon as we get past that deadline. It's the dog days of summer, and then we're all just sitting here and submitting our sims, and that's it. There's not that much to do. You can't trade, you can't do anything. You just kind of sit there and you make your internal moves and watch what happens.
Yeah. Well, and future topic, because I realize we barely ever talk about this. We could talk about during these dog days, just kind of some of the minor league teams and kind of playoff races for that too, because I know your major league team or your PEBA team might be out of it, but you might be looking at those for ways to get extra credits, and it's always fun to just kind of see what some of those are going down to. So another rabbit hole.
Oh yeah.
All right, Michael. Well, I'm gonna get going. I'm getting hungry. It's time for dinner.
I don't blame you.
All right.
Another good chat, sir.
Yep, always. We'll be back next week.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.